Okay, troops, today we're going to look at a very basic effect in Toon Boom Harmony Premium using particles. What we're after is this effect where ashes are spewing from some central region and going in all different directions. After a while, they fade out and more take their place. You can see the effects here in an animation that I made. Let's freeze frame. This is a little particle that goes flying over here and then fades away. This is Harmony version 17 Premium Edition. I already have some drawings on the timeline and they are in frames 1 through 6. That's going to be important later. And they're just simple filled circles. They're just yellows and oranges and reds that I want for my ash colors. Now if you wanted to do something different like a blizzard, you can use the same system here, but you change the colors and shapes of the sprites. So you'd make these circles into snowflakes and then color them pale blues or off-whites or something. Otherwise everything else would just follow the same setup. Now we're going into the node library and we're going to drag in the basic particle systems. We don't need anything fancy for this. Now I'm going to do two things. First we plug the new basic particle setup group into the composite. Then we put the layer that has the 6 sprites or ashes drawings inside the basic particle setup group. I just cut and paste those. We plug in the sprites drawing layer into the sprite emitter like this. Now we change the planar region from rectangle to disk. That's the surface from which the particles are thrown. Let's see what we have so far. Okay, so there's our disk. Nothing's moving, but we can change that in a second. First we need to add two more things. Under particle modifier, we need to add in velocity and kill. Now we have those. We're going to wire them into the particle system composite. I don't think the ordering matters, but I wouldn't bet my life on that. Let's take a look at move particle. There's nothing here that I want to change. All this default stuff is fine. I can't click on age particle. Under kill, I do want to make a change. I want to make this into kill older than and make this to 80 and then close out of this. Now we're going to go to velocity. First thing, we're going to make velocity in random in 2 directions, 2D. We're going to make it x equals 1, y equals 12, z equals 0.67, speed of the minimum of 0.1, maximum of 0.2. To get the minimum angle, I want to make this to -30. So I click on the Bezier curve thing once and then click on it again, change it to local and make it -30. We see this. We see that the particles are spreading more in the x direction than in the y direction. Now we're in a sprite emitter, and in the sprite emitter we have to make a lot of changes. In the generation tab in the sprite emitter, under the first section, we need to make sure that trigger is set to 1 to switch it on. Under the generator section, we change the source samples per frame from a default of 16 and change it to 12, and the streak size to 2. I'm just going to leave the region size as 1. Under type, we change the generation strategy to randomly assign type number. This randomly selects which ash drawing appears. In the last two, particle type 0 and particle type 1 are the frames in which the drawings live. In our case, they were on frames 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so we put in 1 and 6 respectively to cover the range of drawings. Here's what it looks like, but it's pretty indistinguishable from what we had before. We have a couple more changes here. We have to change the age at birth and the age at birth standard deviation to 10, both for those. Put the check mark besides set maximum lifespan. Then max lifespan is 100. Maximum lifespan sigma is 20. What's going on here with the age and assigning age and standard deviations and sigmas and stuff like that? Well, it gets into statistics, so let's talk about statistics. This is a standard normal curve, bell curve. It has a mean. The mean is in the middle. Sometimes you see it like this, where there's little dividing lines between the different regions. What are these little question mark things? Well, those have to do with the sigma or the standard deviation thing. The effect that I want here is that I don't want all of the particles to die at the same time. I want to have some randomness between the particles. How do I do that? Well, that's what the standard deviation thing is. The standard deviation is how much variability do you want between the particles and the age of the particles. When I generate a particle, I want them on average to be around 100 frames, but then I don't want them to all die simultaneously at 100. I want some to be 120, I want some to be at 80. So that's where this picture comes in. This picture tells us what the spread looks like and how variable they are. If you have a really large standard deviation, that means you're going to have everything from like particle with the age 30 to the particle of the age 200, say, for example. I don't quite want that. So how we gauge that or how we calibrate that is with a standard deviation. Let's say I want stuff between 90 and 110. Then I can use this picture to tell me how probable it is for particles to be generated between 90 and 110. And so if I were to draw, I'd be more likely to have particles drawn from closer to 100 than closer to 110, for example. But I can go out a little bit further. I can also possibly have some particles that are as young as 80 or as old as 120. It's possible, but just not as likely as getting them clustered around 100. Next, we go to the particle baker. We're going to do pre-roll frames, and we're going to set that to 100 frames. We're going to change the max number of particles to 150, and we're going to check age particles. Put a checkbox there. All right, last step is we're going to go back to the emitter, the sprite emitter, and the emitter rendering settings. It's the third tab. We're going to change the rendering strategy to use particle type. I want my ashes to be a little smaller, so I'm going to change the size over age to 0.3. And then the last step is to go down to blur. And I'm going to do a directional blur based on frame, and I'm going to change the blur intensity to 0.2. You're not going to see the effect in the OpenGL view, but you'll see it in the render view. All right, we're going to close that out, and then we're going to see what we got.